I'll record it on this. Okay, so we are ready to begin, right? Okay. Good morning, folks. This is Rabinder Sachdev from the US India Political Action Committee. And with me today, we have Suraj Patel, a candidate for New York's 12th District, Democrat, a dynamic personality, a professor, a teacher, an advocate of many causes, and been involved actively in grassroots politics in New York for the past several years, which of course he'll share with you. Now, the issue is this podcast and this broadcast, which is being brought to you, is with the fond hope that you will look into his candidature seriously. And of course, at this key moment in the race, I think one of the key things which counts is the funds. So funds and volunteers and help and all, whatever Suraj wishes, we would love to hear his views. And Suraj, here is your audience. You can reach out with your views. So let me begin first. Okay, what distinguishes your candidacy amongst, and it's become quite a complicated primary, I would say, given the redistricting. So how are you looking at this, at this contest? And please take forward.
Thank you so much, Rabinder, for allowing me to have this platform, and for the listeners of this. Look, we don't have enough Indian American representation in office. We haven't elected an Indian American to office since 2016. And I fundamentally believe that this is the single best opportunity this year, and polling backs that up. So my race has been one that has had a lot of curves and twists because of redistricting. But Democrats in New York City and New York State conspired to gerrymander their own districts to save their incumbencies. 2 years ago, I ran in this race and lost by just 2,700 votes, one of the closest elections in the country. And I came back this year to challenge Representative Carolyn Maloney on the east side of Manhattan. And the Supreme Court of New York found that the incumbents here in New York drew their own lines, and they threw those lines out and had a special court master draw new district lines just a couple of weeks ago. And that race now pits me, a 38-year-old professor who worked for President Obama, who's an attorney, who's run a business, against two career incumbents with 60 years of time in Congress together. I'm a quarter their age. And we're in a race locked in one of the closest elections, I think polling shows, in the country. So what distinguishes me is simple. I'm a first generation immigrant. I've lived in the private sector, public sector. I worked for President Obama. I'm a lawyer. I'm the only one in this race who signed both sides of the paycheck, who knows how to save a business. We've got a city in New York that is coming out of COVID with a 7.5% unemployment rate. And I think that the next 10 years, 15, 20 years is going to take a lot of energy and zeal to build this city back and build the party back. And I have that. And my two opponents have been in office for 60 plus years. And they're just out of touch with the problems that modern America and modern New York face.
Thank you, Suraj. And to the listeners who are listening to this podcast or watching this broadcast, from what we've seen that, Suraj, one thing I'll compliment you with, sir, I mean, looking at your background, you're quite a combatant. You've been fighting it out, right? Be it in politics and of course in your, in your entrepreneurial ventures and in your professional career, but you've been really down in the trenches as far as grassroots politics is concerned. So folks, please, check out what's your website, Suraj, where people could go and, check out more about you and hopefully donate also some.
Yeah, it's www.surajpatel.nyc. There you'll find my platform, which is decidedly about innovation, technology, climate change, democracy reform, immigration. My background is actually one that I'm sure many of your listeners share. My parents moved here. My father came here in 1968 to become an engineer in America. He came with absolutely nothing, literally nothing in his pocket. And my whole family came across, a couple of years at a time with green cards. And my first memories of sleeping in we lived in North New Jersey. My father worked for the MTA, which is the New York City Subway Authority here, as an engineer at night. And we ran a little store, a little shop, convenience shop by the train station, sold, cigarettes and newspapers and tobacco and soda and things like that. And, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. with my my great grandmother, my grandfather, my mom, dad, and uncle, three brothers, all in a one bedroom apartment. We slept on a line in the living room floor. I didn't sleep in my own bed until ninth grade, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And we used to wake up early in the morning on Sundays, and the New York Times and the newspapers would come in separate sections, and we'd sit in the morning and put those together so that we could make an extra dime at that store. And I got to live with my parents through all their sacrifice and hard work and fight, their determination and persistence. They sent me to Stanford University. I went to NYU for law school and Cambridge for my policy degree. I worked for President Obama, like I said.
Mhm.
Fighting and determination and persistence are in my spirit. It's the quintessential immigrant energy. And so I won't give up. And 2 years ago, like I said, it was a heartbreaking loss, one of the closest elections in the country. And I'm back. I'm back because of this community that's listening here, that has put me on their shoulders. And so anything you can contribute to our campaign, and if you click the tab to volunteer, you can, or if you have sons and daughters that have off summer and they want to intern, we have internship and fellowship opportunities both in the tri-state area, but across the country, digitally and on social media and via Zoom. We have an incredible class of people. So come to surajpatel.nyc once again. And there you'll find all the opportunities to get involved, and we would love your support. This is a nationwide race, and if we do it, the last time two House chairs had been pitted against each other was 1932.
Mhm.
And in that year, a third person came in and won the race because he split right down the middle.
So you
That's
want to
exactly,
repeat history?
and we want to repeat history. And if we do repeat history, it will be, historic and extremely powerful for our community, as Indian Americans as well, in this very, important and visible district in America that encompasses almost all of Manhattan.
Excellent, Suraj. Thank you so much. So once again, folks, the website to check out his further background and to contribute to the campaign. And as you very rightly pointed out, given the digital world or age we live in right now, I mean, folks could pitch in, volunteers or whosoever would like to support your campaign in any which way all across America from anywhere, right? But of course, end of the day, the votes on the ground matter ultimately. Therein, I would definitely remind the viewers, which you pointed out. I was reading that, I mean, in numbers of votes that you lost the last time, but essentially it was hardly a 3% or such by which you lost. So that's coming quite close. So definitely, yes, I think we do all wish you the best, and so that you come out on top this time. But a question I have, and let's say within the Democratic Party also, right? There are progressives and there's some further progressives and there's some moderate progressives and all. Where do you position yourself? Because I do understand you position yourself as a progressive Democrat, right? But
Well, I mean,
please.
I would say, yeah, I would say that when I refer to progressive, I
Uh-huh.
mean an Obama Democrat.
Okay.
Back in 2007, when I left law school, I joined the Obama campaign. The reason I chose to work for President Obama
Mm-hmm.
is because he didn't vote for the Iraq War, and Secretary Clinton did,
Mm-hmm.
or Senator Clinton at the time. And that marked us as progressives. But of course, on the issues of innovation and business and supporting small business and supporting immigration and things like that, I line myself up with President Obama on those things, and not necessarily some of the more modern day use of the term, when it comes to defund and things like that. So I would say that Cory Booker and others are sort of my kind of Democrat here, but labels don't matter anymore
True.
because
True.
everyone uses them. All three people in this race call themselves progressives, and it means nothing anymore because it means so many different things to different people.
No, very true, and I'm glad that we just a little bit picked up on it, because I think within the Democrat, let's say, camp, there is some talk, and I think today's recall of the DA in San
Yeah.
Francisco is a very interesting and very symbolic, or and it signals something. So that would be something, perhaps, that's why I was coming up with this question as to where do you. But I fully agree. I think we understand that these are labels. It depends upon the core issues or how you define your issues. Now, let me move on quickly to the next aspect. I mean, in terms of polling, okay, we don't know what the polls say, but in terms of polls, your where are you right now as compared to Rep Maloney and uh, your other incumbent who is also in your district now?
Yeah, so our district, as I mentioned to you, began or was only drawn about 10 days ago. So
Right.
we are, absorbing the information. What I can tell your listeners is that two people in this race, in Maloney and Nadler, are fighting to take credit for the current state of the economy, of the country, of the party, and of our progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because both of them are touting their seniority and time in office as the reason they should be given another year in office.
Mm-hmm.
60 combined years, 30 and 30. Since 1992, they've been in Congress. There's only one candidate in this race offering an alternative, a better vision for the future, acknowledging that the Democrats have made mistakes and overreached in some instances and not delivered in others, and presenting a plan for the future. And when you pose that question to people, 57% of New Yorkers want somebody fresh and new for the next decade versus with seniority and experience. So
Mm-hmm.
that 43% of the vote is being fought over by two people. And on the other hand, only one person in this race represents change. It puts us in an incredibly strong position to come in as the outsider, come in as the free thinker, come in as the auditor and the independent spirit, and start to ask the tough questions of the Democratic Party, which as we all know, the worst kept secret in the world is we're heading for a midterm route, and what is left of that party is going to be rubble, and who builds that party back from that rubble is a question that I think people are beginning to ask themselves already. And I think that we should have a fighter in that fight from Manhattan. And I think lots and lots of voters agree with us. So that is fundamentally one thing. The second part I will say is if you take 2020's results
Mm-hmm.
and you add up the people who voted for Maloney versus the
Mm-hmm.
people who voted for Nadler versus the
Mm-hmm.
people who voted for their opponents, myself and the other two people who ran against Nadler, and you add
Mm-hmm.
that up, 39%, a plurality, is non-Nadler, non-Maloney.
Okay.
So if you just take the 2020 result, non-Nadler, non-Maloney wins anyway. And our polling is backing up the fact that there's even a more fundamental shift away from incumbents to new people. As you referenced the San Francisco recall, if you have an I next to your name this year, I wouldn't want to be on a ballot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting point, and definitely yes. Once again, for the viewers who are listening in, this is Suraj Patel contesting for the 12th district in New York, which has seen a lot of redistricting right now, and it's a very interesting race. And he's positioned as a new age, let's say, political leader versus the incumbents. There are two incumbents, unfortunately, or
Yeah.
for whatsoever reason, in this district where you're contesting from. But as to the point that you said, the non-Maloney, non-Nadler, let's say, vote, the key thing for you is obviously, I would think, getting your message out to the voters, to those non-supporters of those candidates. So how are you getting your message out? How actively is that going?
So we have multiple ways to do it. One, because we are the young, energized grassroots campaign, we have the number of volunteers and interns and fellows and young people that are knocking on doors every night, making 1,000+ phone calls to voters every night. We're
Mm-hmm.
postering the city. We're the only ones that are out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is putting all that together and getting to a grassroots, one voter at a time contact thing. Then, of course, on social media and digital media, we will not be outdone. Our campaign is extremely active. I'm out there every day. We have, and that's when I asked about people out there listening. If your kids and folks, whether you're in New York or not, want to help us out on that, this is a
Mm-hmm.
national effort, and we could use support on that kind of thing. Um, and so we bring in interns and do that kind of work. We'll of course use television and we'll use mail to make sure that our message gets out. What we know from polling is that if
Mm-hmm.
every voter hears every single person in this race's messages, positive and negative, Maloney, Nadler, and me, that we win the race. So what we need is the resources, using TV, mail, digital, and our salaries, of course, of our team
Mm-hmm.
to get out there and get the word out. And that's how this campaign is run. Now, one of the things that I have going for me here is this is my third race. Raja Krishnamurti ran 3 races before he won.
Mm-hmm.
Rokhana ran 3 races before he won. Mibera ran 3 races before he won. And there's a fundamental reason for that, because experience matters in these races. We have gotten extremely good at making our dollar go far. And we've gotten extremely good at being significantly more efficient than our opponents at spending money and how we spend it to who we target it to. Because we are business people at the end of the day, and we know how to run a business. And this campaign is fundamentally the same thing.
Awesome. Definitely. So, a question then: are you the only one, other than the two incumbents, who are, in the race right now? I understand one Abdul Hamid, she backed out, right?
Dropped out. Yeah, yeah. So that's it. Yeah. So right now that's it. It's a three-way race.
It's a three-way race. And how are you doing on the fundraising? If I could ask, if you could share something,
Sure.
because for our viewers, folks, I mean, as we know, money is the mother's milk of politics for elections in the US. And however you may want to reach out, even if you can take a dollar, it can go only so far. So you do need the dollars for your staff salaries, for getting your messaging out,
Yeah.
etc.
And so,
So, folks, please pitch in once again: surajpatel.nyc, the website, and I believe the links to contribute are also there. So, Suraj, sir, how is your fundraising going, and what would be your message to further enthuse folks who are listening to this message to step forward with their dollars for your campaign?
sure. Listen, so we have been very successful. Fortunately, people understand that we have an incredible shot to win. So we have raised $850,000 since February 14th when I entered this race, which is probably a record in terms of a primary opponent. Because the race got pushed back by 2 months from initial election date of June 28th to now August 23rd, it's added 7 more weeks of salaries and support. So it added $200,000 to our budget. So we are aiming to raise $1.4 million in sum total. And we probably have about $1 million in commitments. So we face a $400,000 budget gap. And that isn't to say that we can't fill it, but we implore you across the country who are listening, if you want to elect an Indian American who represents our values to Congress this cycle, then this is the fundamentally best opportunity this cycle to do it. We've received endorsements from the Indian American Impact Fund and significantly other large ones, because people are recognizing that this is the single best shot. And so if you can contribute and get your friends to contribute, the maximum anyone can give is $2,900. So it is a matter of getting, 100 people to give $500. That would be a significantly bigger help for us than one person, writing a big check. We don't have it. So we'd love for you to get your friends and family and people together and help us raise, from 5-10 people at a time, because that's really how it's going to get done.
Awesome, Suraj. And to the folks who are listening in to this podcast, this wordcast with Suraj Patel, candidate for the 12th district in New York. Perhaps, you can, I can feel the energy and the enthusiasm and the chance out there in his candidature and his, chances, perhaps, as we could say, and the hope for his, victory, let's say. So to work towards that victory, and as you're pointing out, Suraj, that amongst the Indian American candidates out there in this cycle, who else do you think, from the wider perspective out there, who are another 2-3, or which are the another 2-3 races which you think are as close or could have as good a potential as you have?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't been following as much since the primaries have begun, because there were some candidates who I believe lost some primaries. I know that last cycle I had several friends who were running who looked like very, very good opportunities, like Sri Preston Kulkarni in Houston, Texas, Pritesh Gandhi and others. But I'm actually, to be honest with you, not familiar with too many other races this cycle in which a Democratic Indian American is running and has a fundamentally strong shot of winning.
Thank you. No, exactly. That's the point I wanted to loop back to. That
there isn't any.
Yeah, or there could be some, but perhaps, let's say, there are some maybe, but then you are one of the few, or you are one who has a good chance and who's a good fighter right now out there, running for this race. Now, I thank you so much for your time. And folks, once again, it is Suraj Patel, candidate for the 12th district in New York, a very, capable candidate, experienced candidate, a veteran candidate, one could say also, as you understand. He's run twice before, the third race now. The last race, you lost by hardly a margin of 3% or 3 to 4% of the votes, right? And going now against incumbents who are fair enough, I mean, who are good candidates also, but who maybe been around for far too long, and it needs maybe some new energy, a new shakeup. So that's it, Suraj. Would you have any message further to kind of pass on to the listeners of this podcast, brought to you guys by the US India Political Action Committee, which we can then further distribute via social media, and of course we'll share it with you and your campaign also, and to be shared with friends and family across. And as Suraj was saying that, I think his estimate is around $400,000. If it can be $500 a piece, X number of people could really fill a hole in the campaign finance.
And the sooner we can get to a place where we're comfortable with the budget, with the fundraising component of this, the more I can be out there instead of making phone call after phone call raising money, to be out there hitting voter after voter after voter. So I'll just implore one more time. I consider myself an extremely proud, forward-thinking Indian American candidate. I remember launching my first campaign with launch videos in Hindi and Gujarati as well, which I'm fluent in. I think that we have an opportunity to elect somebody this cycle that can really push forth our values, and be also representative for the small business community across the country that many of us are a part of, doctors and lawyers and everything, professionals as well. And so please consider supporting us. And like I said, please, both on the standpoint of volunteers and interns and people who can jump in and do some phone calls, things for us, to fundraising. Of course, it is the lifeblood of a campaign. Unfortunately, it's what we have to deal with in America. So please come to my website again, www.suraj, that's SURAJ, Patel, PATEL .NYC. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Suraj. It's been a pleasure, having this conversation with you. And definitely, I can feel, I mean, of course, firstly, we wish you the best and bestest of luck from the US India Political Action Committee. And we would love to get your message out to as many folks as we can via the digital medias as we can. And we can definitely, I mean, listening to you speak, folks, listening to Suraj speak, definitely, kind of gives you an idea of the experience and the fluency he has in the various tactics of a campaign, which he's run twice before. And of course, I'll again hark back to the fact that the previous one, he lost by a very, very narrow margin. So this time, if push comes to shove, we really hope that Mr. Patel makes it through and would make a fantastic congressman in the US Congress. Thank you, Suraj. It's been such a pleasure having you, sir.
Thank you so much. All right, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Thanks a lot.
Ciao.